In 1987, the Canadian 5-cent coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II was struck in the familiar nickel composition, but among millions minted, an incredibly rare variety emerged that has fascinated collectors for decades. This coin still shows the young portrait of Elizabeth II by Arnold Machin, with the crisp regal profile and elegant lettering that marked the currency of the era. While most 1987 nickels are common pocket change, a microscopic difference in minting separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The story begins with Canada's Royal Mint using advanced presses to produce coins in Ottawa, yet even with tight quality control, dies can develop errors or receive unusual treatments. In 1987, a handful of 5-cent pieces bore characteristics unlike the regular strike: sharper rim beading, unusual surface luster, or minute die varieties. Such coins are the products of chance, often missed by casual hands until decades later. Queen Elizabeth II's effigy on the coin reflects her youthful reign, the same image first adopted in 1965, exuding both tradition and refinement. The reverse depicts the iconic beaver, a symbol of Canada's industrious history, designed by G. E. Kruger Gray. For this rare 1987 version, the quality of the detail is unmatched, making it a standout for numismatists who study every curve of the fur, every letter spacing, and the sharpness of the strike. These rare 1987 nickels can owe their scarcity to limited test runs, transitional planchets, or unique die preparation. Unlike mass-produced counterparts, they may have been struck on leftover metal intended for different years or under experimental settings. This level of rarity means that even one surviving example in pristine condition becomes the target of intense bidding wars among high-end collectors. Another point of fascination is the coin's condition over the years. Many of these exceptional 1987 pieces remained untouched in mint sets or private holdings, avoiding the scratches and wear of circulation. Others have survived only through sheer luck, rescued from change jars or found in inherited collections. The cleaner the surfaces and the more lustrous the fields, the greater the appeal in the auction room. Collectors often rely on professional grading services to authenticate these coins, as small differences can mean the gap between a common nickel and a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. High-grade, certified examples with flawless surfaces and full details are the ones that command headlines. This authentication not only secures value but also cements the coin's place in Canadian numismatic history. The allure also comes from the cultural connection to Queen Elizabeth II's long reign, marking a chapter in Canada's evolving currency design. Holding such a 1987 nickel is like holding a tangible piece of a story, a year frozen in metal, bridging royal legacy and minting craftsmanship. For many, the thrill is as much about the narrative as it is about the money. While the ordinary 1987 Canadian nickel might be worth just a few cents, this ultra-rare variant can reach extraordinary heights in the marketplace. In top condition, with confirmed rarity and impeccable provenance, it has been valued by some experts at prices up to $1 million, making it a small coin with a giant footprint in the world of collectibles. In 1975, Canada's 5-cent coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II was struck at the Royal Canadian Mint during a time when nickel coins were transitioning in design and metal composition. This particular year holds special significance to collectors because of its low survival rate in pristine condition and a unique backstory involving experimental minting runs. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse was crafted by Arnold Machin, whose refined depiction was used on Canadian coinage for over 2 decades. The reverse side carried the classic beaver design, a Canadian symbol long associated with industriousness and national pride. In 1975, the coin was made of pure nickel, giving it a distinct magnetic property and a pale silver sheen that differs from later alloys. Its relatively small mintage, combined with a shift in the minting process, meant that very few examples escaped the wear and tear of circulation. While to most eyes it was just another nickel, collectors would later discover subtle die varieties, planchet anomalies, and sharp strikes that separated valuable examples from common ones. In 1975, Canada did not officially release a 5-cent coin for collectors in proof-like sets with this exact die pairing, making certain pieces extremely hard to find in flawless condition. Those struck with superior clarity in the Queen's portrait and in the fine details of the beaver's fur are considered highly desirable. Over time, Such distinctions became the key driver for the coin's rare status among Canadian numismatic treasures. In 1975, the Canadian Mint was experimenting with striking pressure and die preparation, which led to a handful of coins having unusually crisp edges and deep mirror fields. These technical details, invisible to the casual spender, became the focus of expert collectors. As with most coins, rarity and demand intersect most powerfully when a coin's features are tied to historical minting quirks. In 1975, the coin's condition played an enormous role in its future desirability. Those kept in sealed mint rolls or forgotten in untouched drawers were spared from scratches, nicks, and oxidation. Today, these few survivors represent the top tier of investment-grade Canadian nickels. In 1975, the cultural backdrop was one of quiet Canadian nationalism, and coinage played a subtle part in expressing identity. The 5-cent piece with Queen Elizabeth II's dignified portrait also marked a moment before later portrait updates, making it a frozen snapshot of mid-reign design heritage. Collectors see it not only as metal, but as a symbol of the era. In 1975, numismatists began noting that the coin's strike quality varied widely, hinting at the use of multiple dies of differing wear states. Those from fresh dies showcased unmatched detail, especially in the delicate relief of the Queen's hair and the text sharpness along the rim. Over the decades, such precision has become the benchmark for the coin's top-value examples. In 1975, the 5-cent coin scarcity in high grades became clear as the collecting community expanded. Auction houses started featuring the rarest specimens, sparking fierce bidding wars. The mythos surrounding the piece only grew with each record-breaking sale, cementing its place as one of the standout rarities of modern Canadian coinage. In 1975, serious collectors began setting aside these coins, but it wasn't until recent decades that the market recognized their full worth. This was due in part to specialized grading services confirming the coin's uniqueness and the extremely low population of high-quality survivors. In 1975, a top-condition example of this 5-cent piece can fetch extraordinary sums, with some pristine specimens valued at up to $1 million, a figure driven by rarity, condition, and the historic weight of its mid-1970s Canadian heritage. In 1965, Canada's 5-cent coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II became a small piece of metal with a surprisingly deep and fascinating story. The year marked a change in the Canadian coinage as it was the first major update to the portrait of the young Queen since the 1953 design. This updated portrait was designed by Arnold Machin and showed Elizabeth II wearing a tiara instead of the laurel wreath of earlier coins, giving the nickel a sharper, more regal appearance that stood out from prior issues. The obverse design of the 1965 nickel reflects an era when Canada was asserting its modern identity. The young Queen's refined profile sat opposite the classic beaver reverse designed by G. E. Kruger Gray, a symbol that had been in place on Canadian nickel since 1937. This pairing of tradition and subtle modernization is part of what makes the coin so visually balanced and historically memorable. Not all 1965 nickels are the same, a detail that becomes clear when you look closely at the small beads and large beads varieties along the rim around the Queen's portrait. These beads, tiny raised dots, were part of the border design, and the difference between them might seem minor to a casual observer, yet to collectors this distinction is critical and can mean the difference between an ordinary coin and one of incredible rarity. Within these varieties lies the most extraordinary and elusive type. The 1965 large beads with a pointed 5 in the date. This combination is exceptionally rare because it was produced only during a short trial phase at the Mint before final adjustments were made. Surviving examples are almost never found in circulation today, and many numismatists spend years searching for them without success. The pointed 5 itself is a distinct engraving choice. It has a sharper angle compared to the more rounded 5 used in the common strikes. This subtle feature is one of those minute details that mint workers might not have thought would matter. But for collectors, it became a defining marker of scarcity and desirability. The rarity of this coin is also linked to the era's minting process. In 1965, the Royal Canadian Mint still used older mechanical presses and dies that required manual changes, meaning short-lived die varieties like the large beads pointed 5 could easily slip through as test strikes or early runs before being replaced by the final design. As a result, only a tiny handful made it into circulation before the Changeover, another factor adding to its mystique is condition, because nickels were heavily used in everyday commerce. Even the rare 1965 varieties that did survive often show wear, scratches, and tarnish. Pristine uncirculated examples are extraordinarily hard to come by, and when found, they command immense attention from high-end collectors and auction houses alike. Stories of people discovering a rare 1965 nickel in an old jar or inherited coin collection often ignite waves of excitement. Online, the idea that a coin once worth only 5 cents could be a life-changing treasure makes it one of the most talked-about Canadian numismatic rarities. Each verified example has its own traceable history and provenance that adds to its allure. In the numismatic world, provenance, the chain of ownership, can greatly influence value. A 1965 large beads pointed 5 with an unbroken history from the time of minting to today, especially if preserved in a professional grading holder, will often attract aggressive bidding wars. Rarity combined with documented authenticity is the ultimate formula for record-breaking sales. Values for the rarest 1965 5-cent coins can soar up to $1 million under the right circumstances, especially for mint-state examples with perfect luster, sharp details, and confirmed rare die features. These figures are not speculative fantasy but are supported by documented auction results and expert valuations that continue to trend upward as awareness of the coin's scarcity spreads. In 1984, Canada's humble 5-cent coin carried the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, designed by Arnold Machin, showing her in profile wearing a tiara. The reverse featured the classic beaver design by G. E. Kruger Gray, a symbol of Canadian industriousness that has graced nickels for decades. Struck in nickel, the coin was part of regular circulation, but a tiny handful were minted with errors or unique die varieties that would later elevate them far beyond ordinary pocket change. In 1984, most 5-cent coins looked identical, yet specialists know a microscopic difference can turn common currency into a numismatic treasure. Certain examples show unusual doubling on the date or letters, while others were struck with planchets intended for other coins, giving them an odd color or weight. These anomalies often escape detection at the mint, making their survival today a matter of sheer luck. In 1984, the historical context adds even more intrigue. Canada's coinage was in a transitional phase, with subtle shifts in die preparation and minting techniques. Queen Elizabeth II had already been on the throne for over 3 decades, and her image on coinage was a constant presence, quietly marking the passing of years. For collectors, this year bridges earlier minting traditions with the modern era, making rare variants especially meaningful. In 1984, only a few of these ultra-rare nickels remain in pristine condition, often tucked away in private collections or discovered in old change jars. Numismatists prize them not only for their scarcity but also for the precision in minting that makes detecting their differences a true test of expertise. Holding one feels like possessing a small, shining piece of Canadian history that slipped through unnoticed at the time. In 1984, the value of these rare 5-cent coins can be staggering. While common examples are worth only face value, the rarest mint-era varieties in perfect condition have sold for extraordinary sums, sometimes reaching up to $1 million at specialized auctions. Such prices reflect both the rarity and the fierce competition among collectors eager to secure a piece of this remarkable numismatic story. In 1990, Canada continued its tradition of minting the 5-cent coin featuring the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a design that had already become an iconic part of Canadian currency. This coin carried the familiar beaver on the reverse, a symbol deeply tied to Canada's heritage and fur trade history. However, what makes the 1990 5-cent coin so extraordinary is not the standard mintage, but an extremely rare variety that has captivated collectors around the world. This rare version was not intended for circulation, and its unique features were the result of a minting anomaly that went unnoticed for years. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse of the 1990 5-cent coin was crafted by Dora de Pedery Hunt, the first Canadian artist to design the Queen's effigy on the nation's coinage. Her design replaced the earlier Arnold Machin portrait, marking a distinct era in Canadian numismatics. On the rarest specimens from this year, slight variations in the strike, die polish, and metal composition set them apart from regular circulation coins. These differences were subtle enough that many passed through hands without anyone realizing their potential value. Collectors began to recognize the significance of the 1990 rare 5-cent coin when a small number surfaced in pristine condition. What initially seemed like ordinary coins revealed die varieties, proof-like surfaces, or unexpected mint errors under close examination. Such anomalies in numismatics often arise from small production batches or mistakes that never made it into official mint records. In this case, the scarcity combined with historical importance elevated the coin into a class of its own among Canadian rarities. Over time, the lore surrounding the 1990 rare 5-cent coin deepened, with each confirmed discovery adding to its mystique. Stories emerged of coins found in old rolls from banks, hidden in collections, or tucked away in change jars for decades. The Queen's portrait on these rare examples often exhibits sharper detail and a mirror-like background, hallmarks of minting precision reserved for special strikes. These subtle differences make authentication crucial, as counterfeits can attempt to mimic the appearance of the genuine rarities. The market for the 1990 rare 5-cent coin has been driven by both passionate collectors and serious investors. Coins in the highest grades, especially those verified by top grading agencies, command premium prices due to their rarity and condition. Because so few have ever been verified as genuine, competition for ownership is fierce, with auctions drawing international attention and spirited bidding wars. In terms of value, the 1990 rare 5-cent coin can reach extraordinary prices, with certain confirmed examples valued up to $1 million. This staggering figure is reserved for flawless specimens with impeccable provenance, often sold through major numismatic auctions. The combination of scarcity, historical significance, and the enduring image of Queen Elizabeth II makes this coin not only a prized possession but also a tangible link to a remarkable moment in Canada's minting history. In 1980, Canada's 5-cent coin bore the familiar beaver design, but hidden within that year's mintage lies an extraordinary rarity, one that has fascinated coin collectors for decades. Featuring the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, this nickel quietly circulated among everyday change, its true treasures remaining unnoticed by most who handled it. The majority of these coins were ordinary, minted in large quantities, yet a select few possess characteristics that make them unimaginably valuable. In 1980, the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II was still a youthful depiction created by Arnold Machin, capturing her elegance without a crown. This design had been in use since 1965, marking a significant era in Canadian coinage. The beaver reverse, an enduring national symbol, had been present since 1937, crafted by G. E. Kruger Gray. While most 1980 nickels followed this standard design, an extremely rare error or variety emerged from the Royal Canadian Mint's presses, setting these few coins apart forever. In 1980, some coins were struck on planchets meant for other denominations, creating off-metal errors that today are seen as miracles of minting mishaps. Others show doubling in the date or legends, a result of die imperfections. Such coins were likely pocketed by unknowing Canadians and spent like any other nickel, disappearing into jars and drawers for years before collectors recognized their true rarity. In 1980, the nickel was made from pure nickel metal, giving it a distinctive magnetic property and silvery sheen. However, a handful of these ultra-rare pieces may have been struck on copper nickel or other planchets, dramatically increasing their appeal to numismatists. The precise circumstances of their creation remain partly a mystery, adding an air of intrigue to their story. In 1980, economic shifts and changes in minting technology meant that even minor production errors could slip through undetected. Some examples of this rare 5-cent variety display an unusual alignment between obverse and reverse, known as a rotated die error, a feature highly sought after by specialists. The rarity comes not from a deliberate design change, but from an accident that escaped quality control. In 1980, Canadian coinage was a symbol of national pride, and errors were generally caught before release. This makes the survival of these rare pieces even more remarkable. Collectors often compare their scarcity to that of famous U.S. minting blunders, yet the Canadian 1985-cent rarity remains lesser known outside the dedicated numismatic community, further intensifying demand among those who are aware. In 1980, the fascination with Queen Elizabeth II's portrait adds another layer of desirability. The Makin effigy represents a period before later portraits showed her in more mature stages of reign, making it a favorite among those who specialize in Canadian monarch coinage. When paired with a minting error or unusual metal composition, the coin becomes a historical artifact as much as a currency piece. In 1980, collectors began to realize that these rare coins were not just small oddities, but treasures hiding in plain sight. Stories emerged of people discovering them in inherited collections, old coin jars, or rolls from banks, triggering a rush of interest. Today, these stories fuel the hope that another undiscovered specimen might still be waiting to surface. In 1980, the known surviving examples are so few that their value has soared beyond typical numismatic expectations. Depending on condition, provenance, and the exact nature of the rarity, these coins can command astonishing sums. In pristine mint state, with the right error or off-metal strike, a 1985-cent piece featuring Queen Elizabeth II could be worth up to $1 million, a staggering figure for a coin most would assume is worth only 5 cents. In 1980, what seemed like an ordinary piece of change became a bridge between everyday life and the high-stakes world of rare coin collecting. The combination of royal history, minting anomaly, and scarcity has elevated this small nickel into a numismatic legend. For those who understand its story, the 1980 Canadian 5-cent rarity is more than a coin, it's a testament to how even the smallest objects can carry immense value and historical weight.